Hello, this is a video on the argument of fear, on the theme of fear in the Divine Comedy. Fear is central in the whole comedy. We could say that the comedy is actually a sacred poem that talks about fear and on how to overcome it. You find the term fear just from the very beginning because they say there, the verses say there that this forest was so dark that just to think about it would be scary. And in this, we see a movement of thought towards something. And the perception of this movement, which we do not like, is a movement towards death, is fear. So, fear is, from the point of view of the me, of the identification point, is the movement which we don't like. It's the liberation process seen by the me. This movement is happening after the awakening that is expressed in the first verses. I found myself is not referred to Dante, is referred to the true self. So once the true self awakens itself to its true nature, an energetic movement starts, which the me calls fear. And actually, the whole movement in the whole comedy is a spiral movement in hell and in purgatory, leftwards in hell and rightwards in purgatory. But this despiralization is clearly a movement of Kundalini becoming straightened, which will happen only in paradise. There it will ascend directly to the seventh chakra, to the seventh sky. But at the beginning, this movement in the earth, that is in hell and in purgatory, is made through the intermediation of Virgilio. And it is always so, Beatrice, that through Virgilio at the beginning and directly afterwards is the primary engine, the primary motor force that pushes the whole process. And this process of awakening in the feminine form, this is the Shakti which awakens, is felt as a fear until there is identification with the me. So fear actually tells about where we are identified, how much we still have identity with the ego. Once you wake up, this is Shiva who is aware of itself, then its wife, that means its energy side, active side, begins to despiralize and to push the process towards awakening. There are obstacles on this road, which are the three animals that Dante finds at the beginning of the hill, on top of which there is the sun shining, and this sun is called what really is the cure of fear. My fear was quietened by seeing this sun on top of the hill, but there was this obstacle of the three animals, which were making I was afraid of them, especially of the wolf. They are not real animals. We could not call them wolf or leopard or anything because they are representations, symbolic representations of forces of this subtle world. And so it is really a magistral idea of Dante to make things perceptible and understandable through a sort of analogy, but it is not a true animal like a real wolf. Anyhow, this wolf was scaring me through the fear that was coming out of his eyes, as if it was a car with lights coming towards me. This movement coming towards me was making me afraid. So there are these external obstacles, but then in the second chant, we find the internal obstacles. We find that these three animals, like in the Buddhism, Tibetan Buddhism, they call about the three poisons, which is the snake, which is desire, there's the cock, which is rage, and there's the pig, which is the mental obnubilation, the abaissement de niveau mental, would say Genet. And these three poisons are those that keep man linked in karma, going down towards unconsciousness or coming to higher realms of the six lokas, which would be to become a realized man, a semi-god, and then like God. So this spiralization of energy, which in the Garden of Eden is represented by the snake, is also represented by Minosse, the king of Crete, that in the beginning of hell right after the Acheronte, the river of the dead, is judging the souls. He's not really judging in the sense that we mean by judging. He's just administering justice, divine justice, through seeing where the soul has to go. As if you had a small child and you say, well, what class are you to be put in? Oh, you are on the second grade, then we will put you in the second grade. That's your level of preparation, and that's the class in which you will go. So Mintose just does this by spiralizing his tail. This is another genial idea of Dante. Has like a tail which would spiralize around himself and screw the soul down to the place it corresponds to. This is the way the ego is working. You are sort of screwed in, you are limited, you're in a sort of a cage, which is your own thoughts, your own feelings, then, which are consequent to the way you represent yourself. This screwing is the limitation. The unscrewing, the despiralizing, is the way Kundalini awakens and starts then ascending. This is the process of being bound and to be liberated, which Dante represents, like they do in yoga, in a Western way, putting all the Western wisdom and scriptures and knowledge in this poem, which talks about liberation and bondage. And fear is a central, a pivotal concept in all this, because fear is the way the me calls the process of expansion and despiralization and liberation. That's why, for therapy, we are encouraged to go through this and not to avoid this, not to marry the avoiding method or the control method that the residual ego still tries to put in practice, and which make up of most of the psychiatric uh, situations in which I, as a psychiatrist, have to work with, because we find, of course, the moment of liberation is a sort of depersonalization, derealization, demotivation. All these symptoms come from the identity crisis which follow the awakening. But all the other symptoms, which are more energetic symptoms, like in the panic attacks, which take the heart, the throat, or in the head, sounds and lights, and trembling and fear and confusion, all these are energetic effects of the despiralization of energy which passes through the chakras. But we see in psychiatry a third series of symptoms, which is the reactions of the residual ego to these first two processes. For example, the way the ego doesn't accept the personalization is to try to find a substitute personalization, like, for example, in regression to the family, or in inflation. I'm Jesus Christ, I'm Napoleon. And this is a way to feeling to be something instead of being nothing, like the process is trying to bring you to, is trying to make you die and be reborn. And the other series of symptoms connected with energy movement, the residual ego tries to defend itself through avoiding the situations that could make energy move, or the control, the continuous control of these energies through thought, to flying away from feeling and constructing concepts. That's why it is not so useful to try to understand fear. It will only create another story in the mind. What has to be done is to accept the feeling, which is the feminine side of the situation, and the therapist should accompany, and himself should be prepared for this, which is not the case generally, because doctors, who are after all the main figure that should be in on the field for helping these people, because doctors could use as number two also some drugs to limit the energetic process, and as number one accompanying, like Virgilio does with Dante, the person through his crisis. The doctors really are not so fit for this, because they have preparation which is mainly a biomedical paradigm following, and so they are prepared only to see all these things as a biochemical process, which is actually a collateral aspect. Of course, if there is a birth, for example, there must be some chemical alterations, but the chemical alteration is not the cause of the birth of the child. There is a simplification which is really connected with not understanding what the soul is doing and what the universe is doing through human being. And so it is a dehumanization which comes from this biochemical paradigm. If we take a more holistic paradigm, a more spiritual approach, then we would see that though drugs could be useful to limit even the fear, the real solution for a birth is that the child is born. The real solution for the process of Dante is that Dante leaves everything that was old in him and comes to a new conscious, a new consciousness is born, and this is what is mi ritrovai realized in the person. So mi ritrovai at the beginning, I found myself, is the awakening process, but the illumination of the chakras and all the transformations of the matter, like they say in alchemy, is the process that has to follow to make the man to be a superior being. Thank you.